Hi, and welcome to this week's episode hosted by Gray and Mark Law of St John's Health and Fitness and Mark Elm of Leeds Beckett University, where we take training theory and science onto the gym floor.
Right, welcome everybody. Here we are again, episode 9 of the Yorkshire Fitness Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode so far. Today we are going to talk about HIIT training. We'll get straight into this one. I'm going to fire straight in on. We're going to talk about the benefits of HIIT training. Well, what is HIIT training? Do people know? We kind of need to cover all those basics first, don't we, boys? And then we'll fire into it. So we'll crack straight on. So welcome back. I'm Graham. Mark's here again, and his good mate Elm is here over at work. So welcome back, mate. You all right?
Very well, how's thee?
Yeah, we're all right. We're all good. Cheers. Just enjoying his dinner. Enjoying his dinner hour up here. Yeah.
Bang on.
So all good. Yeah. So HIIT training, everybody. What is it? Hell, let's pass straight on to you. Come on. Just give us some basics.
Yeah, before I start this one, I've told these two, if I start talking in too many physiological terms, they have to stop me and we have to kind of explain what they are, because I might just wander off onto some science here. So very simple. Interval training is periods of hard work followed by lower intensity periods of rest or recovery or complete stop. So anything where you have hard work, which is kind of 7 out of 10 and above kind of level, and then a period of rest or lighter work and recovery. That is interval training. High intensity interval training is a brand of that. It's a variation on that, where it's defined by that hard work period has to be very hard. So it has to be, in physiology terms, above the lactate threshold or above a certain amount of work capacity. So if I was to put something on a heart rate monitor, it'd have to be kind of like maximum heart rate kind of level. There'd be kind of like maxing out on the heart rate. An RPE, 8, 9 out of 10, like it's really hard work to do. It's not just hard, it's very hard. That's why it's high intensity as opposed to moderate intensity. So that's basically interval training. It's very simple. I do a bit of hard work and then I have a recovery period, and then I repeat that process until the session's finished.
Cool. So HIIT training basically stands for high intensity. If it's an interval training, that's it, isn't it? High intensity training, HIIT.
Yeah, high intensity training. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it kept, so the HIIT though, Matt, it was for people. It's trying to cut down on time, innit? So that's where a lot of principles came from. What it originally was. Is that right? Or am I wrong on that?
A number of different reasons why HIIT interval training came about. So I'm going to talk about from the performance world how we would use it, why that created it, and then was that an applause? Round of applause for that, Gray? Sorry.
No, mate, just a fly.
All right.
Sorry.
Never mind. I thought it was so good an explanation. You're compelled to applaud. So from a performance point of view, HIIT interval training came about where, so if I wanted to run 800 meters and my average running pace wasn't fast enough, I would run above and beyond my natural running pace for a short period of time, then drop down. And over time, what would happen is I would adapt to that higher running pace and then be able to sustain that for longer, and that would then transmit to me running that 800 meters faster or cycling the race faster. I think that's where initially that came about.
Yeah.
Then if I
Sorry. Yeah, all I'm going to say, I think for general population training, that's where the sort of principles that like, how can we use that in a model that works for people for time saving? Yeah. So
from that bit, so obviously the HIIT stuff came from the performance world, and then it's migrated across, as often things often do, into the general population type of training. And from improving aerobic fitness, I think there's a couple of BBC programs not long back, probably actually 20 years ago now, think about it. But what they said was, if you want to improve your aerobic fitness, your VO2 max, which is like the measure of aerobic fitness, you can do HIIT interval training and improve your VO2 max in a fraction of the time it would be for just going for a slow, steady state run, that kind of thing. So improving VO2 max, or your aerobic fitness, which was a measure of health at the time, and still is, was done in a much shorter space of time than you would do by just kind of plodding around at kind of 50% of your heart rate kind of activity. So that's where it came from. I think how it's used now is very different in terms of what people do in the general population than it was perhaps intended to be used for. So I think you guys do a lot of HIIT training, and I don't think anybody would say to you at the beginning of their sessions, my 800 meter time isn't where it needs to be. I need to do this HIIT session so I can run a bit faster. You're probably going to get a very different kind of client. So kind of how do you see people using HIIT training then? And we can kind of maybe get into the kind of pros and cons.
Yeah. So I think from our point of view, people like HIIT training because obviously the high intensity, they like that feeling of working in the mat, but so from their point of view, people obviously the harder the work, they feel they burn more calories, they burn more fat. So I suppose we could look at a little bit on why that happens, Mark, really, or what.
Let's just go, just before we go on to that, what about what we were saying earlier about, you know, we did a strength podcast, the strength training, we said, we didn't want to seem like we were coming across as
We're not anti-HIIT, we've just got a time and a place. We've got
and we have members here, we have people who kind of, when we try and sell them the strength training, the benefits of strength training, you know, the importance of that and the different kind of benefits, that a lot more people are used to the high intensity, maybe not, even if they've not known it as HIIT, they like to go to a gym and walk out with a sweat on, don't they? They just do, you know, like that's why spin is so popular. They like to know they have burnt so many calories, which will therefore, you know, help if it's a weight deficit, if it's a calorie deficit they're trying to hit, they know if they burn loads of calories while they're at gym, they're more likely to hit that calorie deficit. By strength training, that calorie, obviously, the consumption of calories that you've burnt in that session is going to be less. So people love to do the HIIT training. The difficult thing is explaining the benefits of both and how well they work together. But yeah, so we have both. We have differences. Some people really like the strength training and some people love doing the HIIT training, and it's kind of a bit of a crossover. We do find ourselves trying to explain the benefits of both, and it's like you don't just have to do one. You don't, you know, like we were telling somebody earlier, when one of us blocks of classes, we run 8-week blocks, 3 sessions a week, and it kind of differs a little bit. We take measurements at the beginning of the 8-week, and we kind of remeasure halfway through and at the end. And one of the blocks, we decided to throw in a strength training block. So like, let's improve our core strength over this next 8-week block. So all as functional, all as big lifts, as squatting, as deadlifting, as pressing, as pushing, a couple of big pushes, a couple of big pulls. And we tried explaining it and selling to them that how important that would be in their future of training and exercise and life, you know. And they bought into it. It was really good to start with, but about halfway through, they were complaining a little bit that they weren't getting a sweat on and they weren't burning calories. They were walking out of the gym and they weren't dripping wet through and they hadn't burnt 600 calories on the Fitbit or the Apple Watch. Not hard enough. But like, you've got to understand the process of the strength training to build. But so that's where this all comes in, isn't it? This is why we decided to do this podcast, to talk about the benefits of this.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about being an S&C coach, not worrying about those kind of things. I'm very much that performance mindset, and if I use the HIIT session, it's because I want to get somebody to get faster or aerobically fitter. I would use HIIT sessions quite well in injured players. So if somebody can't run, they'll be on the watt bike, and I'd have like a 6 second on, 24 second off, high intensity interval kind of protocol to maintain that anaerobic tolerance. And the anaerobic power, so when they went back on the pitch, they'd not lost quite so much of that fitness. None of my thinking was, do I make them sweaty and I'm burning calories? That wasn't anything that I would think.
None whatsoever.
But that's completely the opposite flip when you leave that performance space and go into the gym. With a general client. So it is really difficult. So I think for me, going back to some fundamental physiology of what happens during a HIIT workout, and hopefully that can explain why people would do HIIT and why they would get a benefit from it. So we use 2 fuel sources when we kind of burning energy. One is carbohydrates, and the other is fat. When we're working at very high intensities, we have to use carbohydrates because that's like our fast burning fuel source. And at lower intensities, we're going to be using fat predominantly. And we talk about kind of physiological metabolic flexibility. Somebody who can use both equally well will be somebody who's metabolically healthy. Somebody who's kind of got diabetes, for example, will struggle to flip between those two things. But in a HIIT session, you're going to target both those fuel sources. So if you did like a 6-second bout of activity, you would be kind of really aggressively targeting your carbohydrate stores. And they're stored in the muscle and they're stored in the liver. When you stop and have a 24-second rest or a minute's rest or whatever happens to be, and you're not stopping, you are just ticking over, doing something. If you're on like a spin session, for example, I would use like a watt bike, but on a spin session, you might do like an aggressive 6-second sprint and then just tick over for 24 seconds. I'm sure that doesn't happen in spin, but if it did, in those 24 seconds, you're burning fat. And what we would see is typically the fat utilization in those 24 seconds is far greater than if I was just pedaling at that same level of intensity without the preceding intensity hard work. So if I was pedaling at, I don't know, 60 revs per minute, I might burn X amount of fat just pedaling at that intensity. But if I pedal at 60 RPM after doing a 6-second sprint, I'm burning much more fat at the same speed. So go on. That's
the quick question then. So that is I'll simplify that. That's the people that go to the gym. I'm not picking on people, but the ones who go to the gym and spend an hour on a cross trainer at really low intensity because they think they're in fat burning zone because they might be following instructions on the cross trainer. They are. So you're saying the benefits of doing a bit of HIIT work, really high intensity, in between those low phases, you will benefit more from being at that low intensity.
Yeah, and the benefits are twofold. So you'll burn more fat. If the high intensity periods will improve your fitness level, so that's going to have some health benefits as well as improving your fat consumption. So you're going to get a double whammy there. Now, what I'll also say is intensity is relative to the person. So your 100% is going to be different to somebody else's 100%. So what I'm saying is, if I say sprint, somebody might be able to go really, really fast, and you can't, and that's okay as long as it's hard for you. And then everybody scales down from that. So if that means literally just barely turning your legs over is your rest, that's still okay, as long as your rest is your rest and your hard work is hard work. It doesn't matter how fast or how slow you're going. But as you get fitter, just remember to kind of increase those levels. So reason why the time Mark mentioned at the beginning was important is because in that rest period, we're burning more fat compared to just steady state kind of ticking over. We can burn the same number of calories in a shorter period of time.
Yeah.
Because there's high intensity work periods of driving up our fat utilization in the recovery period. So a 60-minute steady walk on a treadmill becomes a 30-minute, 24-minute HIIT interval session on the treadmill for the same amount of calorie consumption. Plus you get some fat burning benefits. The flip of it is it's mentally hard work because you're having to push yourself every 30 seconds to do like a 5-6 second all out whack.
Yeah. I had another question then, and it's just gone straight from my head. It wasn't maybe even just wasn't even a question. It was
whistling.
That's what I'm going to say. So, but not only that though, Matt. But yeah. So on top of that, because you're working high intensity, you don't need to work as long, neither do you. Do you know, like, so the recovery between, because it puts more stress on your body as well, because you're working at them higher intensities, doesn't it? So that's what I'm going to say to you then.
Yeah. So you can condense those workouts. Like, so if a true HIIT interval session, put my teeth back. HIIT interval session doesn't need to be that long. If you get the work periods and the rest periods right, and that's the other kind of variable within interval training is the work to rest periods are really important to maintain the intensity of the session, the quality. So it's about kind of manipulating your rest periods. But yeah, you can condense a workout into a much shorter period of time because the overall intensity is greater. And if you're targeting fat utilization, that's your thing, that's your most important priority, you are getting higher activation of that fat utilization in those rest periods than a traditional steady state jog.
Yeah, I think another really good thing for you to explain here, and which we tell a lot of those clients as well, after you can put it in your own words as well. Obviously, after you've done that HIIT session, so you might have saved yourself half an hour or 20 minutes through the workout, but then after your session, because you worked harder at a higher intensity, your body will stay in that kind of fat burning zone for a bit longer, won't it? After you've trained, rather than if you've done just a low intensity kind of training session?
Yeah. I'll try to keep the physiology to a minimum. We arrive at something that's called oxygen debt, which is when you work very, very hard, you use a way of kind of creating energy that doesn't rely on oxygen so much, but we have to repay that debt. So if you've done a hard interval session, you then basically should be breathless. You should be kind of out of breath and gasping for air. In doing that, we are kind of bringing back oxygen into the body and using that to create new forms of energy to replace what you've just burned. So that maintains our metabolic activity, that maintains our use of energy for a long period of time. So what we see compared to steady state training is that interval training maintains that metabolic activity, your usage of energy, for far longer than it would have if you just gone for a steady state jog. So that is the other benefit, like we're talking about you got an hour's worth of training and 23 hours to mess it up. Well, actually, HIIT interval training extends that into, you might do 30 minutes of training plus an hour. That gives you 22 and a half hours to mess it up rather than 23. So it does go beyond the session itself rather than simply stopping when you finish running.
Yeah. That's a big selling point for some people. I've told people that and they're like, "Ooh, really? So I can be walking out of here, I can be driving home and I will still be burning calories. I will still be burning more fat than I would have been if I had trained." It's like, "Oh, I like that." And people love that.
I think it's important to say a bit, but it's not like at the same level of energy burning in the session.
No, obviously not. No, but but more than there would be if they hadn't have done it.
It's a small
I think the time thing. We talked about. I mean, as very first episode, we talked about the minimum required of strength training to get the benefits of it, didn't we? Because of people's busy lives, and I think that's where HIIT training again comes in for people, doesn't it? Where it doesn't have to be an hour and a half run to get some benefit. You know, you don't have to think, I need an hour and a half to get it. You don't need a long time, do you? You can get in a short period of time, you can get quite a lot of benefit with HIIT training.
Absolutely. The other thing about HIIT training is you can't do it for a long time, and this is a bit of a misconception I think in the space is what happens is you only got a finite ability to work at high intensity. Then your body starts to fatigue. You can't generate those high outputs. So imagine that you are on the spin, but you see people's like cadence dropping. So I will measure things in watts. So eventually that becomes lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And so if you measure the kind of the output, the difference between the rest periods and the hard work periods, as the session goes on, those kind of merge together and become very similar because you just can't push to the same level of intensity. So it becomes quite aerobic at the end, as opposed to this kind of high-low version becomes very kind of average. So I think like less is more to a degree. Not like 3 minutes, although you can get some benefits from just a 3-minute interval. But once you get past 30 minutes, I think you're really kind of getting into that. Are we really doing intervals anymore? Are we certainly not doing high intensity intervals anymore? And we're into mindless calorie burning a little bit. Now, not all interval sessions are born equal, and we just talked about this. And I think there are ways of prolonging that. But ultimately, you've only got so many high intensity intervals in the tank, and once they're spent, and it becomes something else. Now, are you still burning calories at that point? Yes. And if your goal is to burn calories, crack on. You're still burning calories. It's still hard work. You're still going to get hot and sweaty. And if that's mentally what you need, brilliant, fine. I don't think that's wrong, but I don't think if you're promoting or think you're participating in high intensity interval training, after 30 minutes, you're probably not. It's just something different to that. I'm that kind of performance mindset where no, like if we're not hitting performance, we're not doing the thing we want to do, and we have to do something different. But again, that's not what most people go to a HIIT interval session for.
That's right. Yeah, they don't come to our gym for that. But we do have to explain things a little bit like what you've just been talking about there. You absolutely hit nail on the head. Some people we brought, as we expanded this timetable, let's say, brought more and more classes, we've started throwing some HIIT sessions in. So we did some 30-minute HIIT sessions in the gym where people come in, have a real good warm-up, and then it's like this, it's going to be done and dusted in the 30 minutes because you shouldn't be able to do it for longer. And you still got people at end of sessions saying, I don't really feel like I've worked hard enough. I don't feel like it's been long enough, that session. And it's like, well, you clearly haven't worked hard enough, because if you've done your intervals to 100% to your maximum effort, 30 minutes would be plenty.
Yeah. So again, for me, when I'm prescribing intervals, when I went to the watt bike stuff, so for those people that don't know what bike, it's like a sports science type of exercise bike. So I would set like certain metrics that or outcomes the players have to do. So certain amount of watts, or pedaling at a certain speed on a certain gear. So it's like aligning the certain moment. If you can't do that, then this is not high intensity interval training for you. So we test at the beginning, going right. Every interval is going to be 600 watts or 100 reps per minute or something like that. So there's a very clear definition of this makes it high intensity for you.
Yeah.
Whereas if you said, right, I just want to run or pedal, and as people get tired, that level declines, which it will do. You kind of then they're self-managing and not being high intensity anymore. But again, that it's horses for courses, and it's like going, if they're not trying to run or speed or play, it doesn't matter as long as they're working out and getting what they want from it. But for me, that kind of pedantic sports scientist, it's like my brain's going, that's not high intensity. But it doesn't mean it's bad. It's different.
Yeah, no, it's in, and I get it, and the people who we're training, and some of them want that, but it's nice for, I think, just to understand that they've got the benefit to what they need in that short space of time. There's got to be a win in thinking that, no, I've got to keep pushing on for another half an hour and just drag my ass through another 30 minutes of just hard work. Whereas if you go home, you eat well for, if you did, and then if you can eat well for that other 22 and a half hours back then, or whatever it comes to, and then you go and you recover and you go again. What other things do you think people would benefit from knowing about that then? So there's obviously the fat burning more fat, the calories in space of time. What about recovery from HIIT, Mark? What's your thoughts on that for people doing HIIT sessions and repeating HIIT sessions? Multiple HIIT sessions within a week, or?
I mean, the recovery is a very individual, very personal thing. And again, it's down to age, baseline level of fitness, ability. Like, are they doing spin? So there's no impact. So impact for me is landing on the ground kind of impact, rather than impact on the heart. So if you're doing like a repeat sprint session, like where you got like pounding the ground hard, that's going to have longer to recover than if you did a spin session where you're just kind of turning pedals over. It's hard, but it's a different kind of mechanical stress that the person's hitting. Then you got in sleep and diet and lifestyle and stress. So it's really very much individual and time based. So and again, if you how much drained you are by one session, so the harder it is, the more recovery you need. So you're talking about a point there where somebody did like a 30-minute HIIT session and they were still hitting those numbers that you set for them at the end of the session. So you're happy that they've done that, and they walked out. You come comfortable that the next day or the day after they come back and do something similar again. Where if they're literally like covered in sweat, can't turn the legs over anymore, they're crawling out at the gym going, you're on a 3-day recovery, because you literally, if you can't do this activity, that same intensity again, then you can't do interval training. You should do something slightly less intense. So I can't give you like a line of a general.
That's but that's a fair point. Yeah,
you could flip between different types of interval sessions on a day-to-day basis. So we just talked about all these different types of interval training. So for example, you could do a spin session on a Monday, which is very leg dominant, and then do maybe something like a battle rope box exercise session, which is more upper body dominant on the Tuesday. So you're hitting different muscle groups to different levels, as long as you generally recovered okay. So your legs might be aching a bit, but you feel okay. A battle rope box exercise session might be okay for you. And then you can flip and alternate as the week progresses. So again, horses for courses, picking the right time of the week to do the right activity. Doing 3 spin sessions back to back to back on 3 consecutive days is probably not going to be great for you. Probably your backside as much as anything else.
Unless you're a spin instructor.
Unless you're a spin instructor, you should be conditioned to apply them.
Oh God, yeah. Backside, legs, everything.
Yeah.
Somebody were asking for, like Lasso was doing a spin for us, somebody were asking about the backsides. Like, how long is it going to take my ass to stop hurting because it's killing me? They've done like the second spin session.
Yeah, free to the super cream when you sign up.
So yeah, it's obviously a bit of a long-standing joke. It's been quite
oh god, it is, yeah.
So loads of benefits then, isn't there? So straight away you can just reel them off. So the fat burning, the time saving for me is what's amazing about sprint. Is ace about HIIT. I would much prefer it. Sometimes I want to go for a run, and I think I ain't got time to like a 10k or 5k or a 10k, but I can nip to the bottom of the road where there's a really good hill, and I can blast out a few hill sprints, and I can be done in. It's about 30 seconds to get to the top of this hill, and it's a pause drive, and then a nice steady walk back.
For you, or 30 seconds for Joe?
30 seconds for me. Yeah, it's about 20, I think. A gentle walk back, boom, probably I would say about 90 seconds rest, and then go again. Do 6 of them, you're done. You're finished. 15 minutes, and you're kind of done. You're back in house, and you're knackered. You know you've had a real good workout because you have worked. So that, like I say, every time you hit the top of the hill, your heart rate is up there at 100%. You're working to a really, really high level. You need to stop at that point, and then you catch your breath. And so it's great for time saving. For me, is massive. I love it.
I prefer it anyhow.
Yeah.
I don't like. I mean, we're doing we're doing this 24-hour challenge, don't you? This John O'Groats to Land's End thing.
No, I didn't know this. Don't tell us about that.
Don't you know about this? We'll quickly touch on it then. So we're going to do on 10th of June, Mark. We're going to do on the ski, bike, treadmill, and rower. We're doing 24 hours. So we'll work me, Gray, and then Will. We're gonna do 30-minute blocks. So 30 minutes on one piece, 30 minutes on another, and then 30-minute recovery for 24. And we're trying to cover the distance. But then clients are going to come and pay, because we're going to do it for hospice, for Wakefield Hospice. So clients are going to come and pay 10 quid for an half an hour slot to help on. So there'll be 2 machines free at any period of time over 24 hours. But that's going to be just steady, continuous work. And
16 hours we'll
16 hours we'll do each.
Over the 24 hours, we're going to do 16 hours of exercise. And all 4 pieces of kit will be running continuously for the 24 or hopefully 24 hours. We've set a limit of 24 hours, but it's till we've done the distance of Johnny Goats to London. So it's 1,407 kilometres. So we've got to average, 7 kilometres on each piece of kit?
Per half hour.
Every half an hour stint, you've got to average 7k. I know some will be different. 7k row, 7k run, 7k ski, 7k on bike. Obviously, the bike, we will get more kilometres. So that will make up for us not hitting the row, the ski, and the run.
Fair,
7k.
That's a fair pace on the treadmill.
Yes, very.
Bike,
so we never.
No, what we're going to look for that is, Mark, is that members are going to come in who can run and get on treadmill and bang 7k out.
We will not, after 24 hours, we will not be running 7k.
I don't think many are going to do 7k in 30 minutes, to be honest. But it's hard on that, because it's curved treadmill is ours as well, so it's a tough gig anyhow on that.
But you might get a few people on a moped, like racking up some miles on it.
Yeah, but Watt bike, if people come in and have a Watt bike, they can give us some, that should gauge us some. But all I was saying on that one, so we started doing a little bit of extra training for that, and it's just I find that harder, because it's harder mentally than what it is just going all out for your interval session.
I'm a bit the other side. I know all the benefits of interval training, and it should in my mind be better for me, but I just don't like that side of training, the aerobic side of training. I put me in the gym with the weights. That's where I'm at. So if I'm going to go and do that, I need to go for a run, largely because once I've got so far out, no matter where I go back, it's the same distance back. So I'm going to finish it and just and turn my brain off. I think with interval training, your brain's always saying, because you always focus on work rest. And I find myself going, my brain just doesn't like that mentality. For some reason, I just don't engage with intervals as well as I should do, considering I know every benefit there is, and it should suit me better doing intervals, but it just doesn't. I don't know why. I wish I could make myself do them, but if I go for a plod, and it is a plod, I went for a run at the weekend, and that was even less than a plod. Trudge is probably closer to saying it. Awful.
Well, get practicing because you'll need to come in here and bang 7K out on treadmill.
Can I not just squat as an alternative?
No.
Okay.
You've got to come and do it. You've got to come and do at least 1 30-minute slot.
You can do a bike ride.
I'll get some minutes in. Yeah.
You'll be all right on bike. What you get?
I'll go on the walk bike and I'll keep on the treadmill and we'll get some miles in. We completely lost track of what we're talking about then. Interval training.
We just witted on then about we were just saying how we'd rather go out and do that. Like 20-30 minutes of HIIT training, hill sprints, whatever it might be. If it's on skier, on bike, rower, I'd much rather do that than go and think, right, I'm going to plod.
I suppose then that leads into the next bit. Is like, do you have to go to a class to do HIIT interval training? And if you were doing HIIT, you couldn't get to the gym, you're time limited. How would you give people advice to go and do their own HIIT session if they didn't want to listen to Joe Wicks, for example?
Yeah. Well, we'd tell them to find a hill. That's as good as if you can run. Yeah, if you're capable of running, I'd tell them to find a hill. I think that'd be my number one. If not, I suppose it would maybe be if they've got some kind of. But I suppose it depends on them physically what they can do. I mean, there's a lot of good HIIT sessions you can do at home, isn't there, with your body weight. You don't need to go anywhere, do you? So yeah, I suppose it depends on them individually, doesn't it, and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah. That's something we talked about just before we came on about going what somebody's capable of doing, and not just doing once. It's like, what does it look like on the 7th interval when you are getting tired and you still have to put the output out? So we have a conversation about home about kind of different exercise choices in interval sessions, and for me, if there's some exercise where it's likely to degrade, you're going to get worse, and that thing getting worse could cause injury. So, for example, we say we're going to do body weight, we're going to do like 25 squats in 10 seconds or something as ridiculous as that. Or jumping, that's my pet hate. You jump for power. You don't jump for conditioning, you fucking power.
Good job you want on Zoom with us, mate, through lockdown.
Oh, don't go there. Anyway, but what I would say is, like, you can hurt yourself by jumping. You can pull a hamstring, land badly, do something which is going to be safe and repeatable for every single interval that you do. So going for a run or a row or bike, there's no kind of likelihood of causing harm there. You can maintain that consistency of technique. It's where, for me, if something's going to break down in technique and that breakdown technique is likely to cause an injury, or actually maybe not as bad as an injury, but you're just not doing the same work. So if I say take the squat, the gold standard exercise, which is squatting, everybody should squat more. You should be able to go from full down, arse on the ground, and everything should look perfect every single time you do that. But if you do a full range of movement squat, your work, the mechanical work that you do, the energy burn per squat should be the same. But what you see is people, as they get tired, squatting halfway down, then a quarter way down. So they're not doing the same amount of work. They're not burning the same number of calories because they're just moving far less. So they're not doing the deep squats. They're only moving half as much. And then it's all back. So they're kind of like doing head nods. So even less, like, you're not using the big muscle of the legs anymore. You can using the smaller ones of the upper back, but your head's moving up and down, so the brain thinks it's working. I'm going to stop ranting soon, I promise. So that's why I wouldn't do things like that in a HIIT interval session, because you're moving too far away from the effect that you want to create, which is really working with high intensity, with high quality, and really challenging the body to kind of produce an output. So do things that I can consistently be repeated as well in the first rep as the last rep.
Yeah. The best ones require less skill, don't they?
Yes.
If you know, the less skill required to do it, within your capabilities skill level wise, the one that you have to think about the least skill wise are the best ones for you, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're more likely
like we talked about box size, if you were really good at punching and you're really good and you know you can keep repeating good technique with punching, it takes some beating for doing. You know, like, if you can't, anybody can move a battle rope, can't they? You know, like, so that's why bike is brilliant in a lot of ways, isn't it? Because everybody can turn the legs, can't they? And they do that. So a bike is brilliant. I think rowing machine's pretty good, but you see people's form go with rower, and you see people form go and they start pulling all sorts of ways. You know, like, so you want the ones that require the least amount of skill as possible, or within your range of what your capabilities are.
No, I've kind of bashed some exercise there, but if you rotate around exercises quite a lot, so one skill doesn't get hammered and therefore that degrades too much, but everybody's going to get tired. And if somebody's kind of like technically not great at the beginning, they're not going to get better at the end of a HIIT session. So like, can you give somebody an alternative to that that is still high intensity for them, but is less likely to break down? I think when you start to get into like bodyweight movement or resistance training movements, you're into a huge amount of variability to who can do what under stress.
Yeah,
I see people jumping at the end of a HIIT session. Sorry, boys, sorry. And like going, oh, they're going to do I can just see an ACL going here. I can just like somebody's going to land badly or fall over, and just like
you're maybe thinking of proper jumping here, Elm. You maybe think a lot of that when I see a lot of people doing squat jumps, or if we say, right, come on, let's do squat jumps, the feet are barely leaving floor. They're basically doing a bit of a half squat and the feet are maybe leaving floor an inch. So there's different types of jumps and squat jumps. Like you just said, it just comes down to the person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's what your capability is, what you can do. Some people just refuse. Some people cannot squat jump. So you might tell them to squat jump at the end of the session, and they can't. They just do normal squats. So it's very personal, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's a little bit specialised. The HIIT, to get the true benefit of HIIT from a performance point of view, definitely is specialised. Whereas we broaden that, don't we, to make it more inclusive to everybody. So how can we get people understanding the benefits of HIIT on our gym floor and buying into the process of it, of working hard, working low, working hard, working low through a session?
And I think that's, again, a skill that I'm not sure that people appreciate in the wider community. Is like a group HIIT session, for example, for me the skill is to be able to say, right, then how do I get 25 people with all these different levels of ability, and each person to work at their maximum intensity in a way which is sustainable for them. So this is you, this is you, this is you. And actually to coach it rather than just instructing to lead it. So somebody, rather than kind of barking out instructions, being really energetic at the front, that's admirable and is a starting point. But that's not like at the end of the session when somebody's in the back corner trying to hide because they're really struggling. That's when they need a skilled coach to go and say, this is your high intensity activity for you in this activity, because that's where you are, that's what you need. And correct technique as well, actually going, your technique's dropping, you're dropping your chest too much, or you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. You need to really kind of be careful of this one. You need to do it in this way instead. So actually actively going and coaching the thing rather than just jumping and being positive and happy and enthusiastic at the front.
Yeah, no, you are, you're bang on that.
I'm not very good at that bit, so that's why I don't do it. I'm miserable and grumpy at best times, so I don't want to hit.
You'll just stick to squatting.
Don't worry, we're good at all that.
Yeah, we'll sort
we love that.
Right, so I bet we're all right for time there, mate, aren't we?
Yeah.
We've been half an hour. Still trying to keep us about half an hour. So hopefully that has been a bit of an insight, quick, short, sharp insight into the benefits of HIIT training.
Yes.
That's what we want. That's what we wanted to achieve. So hopefully, if you've listened, you now know a little bit more about HIIT training, a bit about the physiology of why it's good for you, why we should hopefully all be doing a bit of HIIT training.
Yeah, and hopefully people can start to think about what they're doing and start to be a bit more selective in picking the right type of HIIT workout for them, and be a bit more open-minded to, well, this HIIT session has this quality, but this one maybe suit me a little bit better. Or if they want to do some workouts at home, they know some basic principles of what they should be doing. Yeah,
awesome. So that's it then. So thanks again, mate. Thanks for putting your point across so well and scientific. You weren't too scientific today. You did well. We didn't have to tell you to stop at any stage. Yeah. You were all right.
No, we'll get into some real technical stuff next week, I'm sure.
Yeah, awesome. Right, awesome. So that's it. Right, thanks for listening, everybody. I hope it helped. See you soon.
Bye.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked the episode, we'd like you to share with us that on YouTube, Instagram and Twitter. You can listen again on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a rating and a review, and any comments would be more than appreciated. And hopefully you'll tune back next time for our next episode.
The Yorkshire Fitness Podcast.